welcome and subscribe and turn on notifications. Dave and Luna had been eagerly awaiting this trip, a much-needed break from the hustle and bustle of daily life. The idea of spending a weekend in the mountains, surrounded only by the sounds of nature, felt like a dream. They had carefully planned every detail, from choosing a rustic cabin with large windows offering spectacular views of the hills, to a menu featuring fine wines and dishes prepared by Luna, who loved to cook. Tom and Emma were more than friends. They were like family. The two couples had built years of memories together, from spontaneous trips to home dinners, with long conversations about life. This trip had a special purpose: to celebrate a friendship that had withstood time and life's changes. When they arrived at the cabin carrying suitcases full of cozy blankets, board games, they laughed like children upon realizing the place was even more beautiful than in the photos. The fresh mountain breeze was an invitation to relax and forget the outside world on the first night. The energy was pure celebration. After a delicious meal, they gathered in the living room around a fireplace where the wood crackled, spreading comforting warmth. Stories of past adventures were told between sips of wine as laughter filled the room. It was the kind of moment that made Dave believe nothing could shake their connection. The next morning, the group explored the area around the cabin, walking along trails that wound through the trees and ended with a stunning view of a crystal-clear lake. Emma was the most excited, always suggesting funny poses for the photos they took together. Tom, more reserved, limited himself to smiling and keeping pace, while Luna and Dave lagged behind, enjoying the tranquility of the place. Everything seemed perfect. The light and carefree atmosphere made Dave feel that this would be one of the best weekends of their lives. When the second night came, the environment was even more relaxed. The fireplace was lit again, and the Coops sat around it with their wine glasses. The conversation started with trivial matters, but soon became more personal, reflecting the comfort and care she had. Trust among them. Emma, always the most outgoing of the group, told a funny story about a trip she took with Tom years ago. Feast in hearty laughs from everyone. Luna, who loved Emma's sense of humor, also opened up, sharing hilarious moments she and Dave had experienced together. It was the kind of night that seemed impossible to spoil. The perfect combination of laughter, stories, the soothing sound of the wind outside created an ideal setting. Dave, sitting on the sofa with Luna by his side, looked around and felt grateful for that moment. To him, the trip was fulfilled, filling exactly what it promised, strengthening the bonds with their friends and providing a welcome break from routine. Little did he know that soon a single sentence would completely change the dynamics of that night and shake the foundations of what he believed to be a solid relationship, an unshakable friendship. Emma leaned forward, resting her elbow on the arm of the sofa, and with a mischievous smile lighting up her face, she uttered the sentence that in an instant completely changed the room's atmosphere. What if we swap partners for a night? The room, which moments before was filled with laughter and warmth, seemed to freeze in time. Dave felt a chill run down his spine, as if the air had suddenly become heavy. He laughed, trying to disguise the awkwardness. "Oh, sure, Emma. Very funny," he replied in a tone that sought to normalize the situation. Dave's forced laughter met only the awkward silence of Tom, who avoided looking at anyone. Emma's smile, on the other hand, remained, as if she expected the idea to be taken seriously. And then the unexpected happened. Luna, next to Dave, let out a light laugh and said with an enthusiasm he didn't recognize, "Wow, what a fun idea, let's do it." Dave's heart sank. Those words, spoken by his wife with a surreal naturalness, hit him like an avalanche. He looked at her, hoping to find a playful expression, a look that would confirm it was just a harmless tease, but what he saw completely disarmed him. Luna's eyes were shining with curiosity, as if the suggestion had ignited something inside her. Tom, who had been quiet until then, finally shifted on the sofa. He seemed uncomfortable moving, as if he wanted to disappear into the cushion. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Emma," he mumbled, his low voice almost lost in the crackling of the fireplace. But Emma didn't back down. She swirled her wine glass in her hand and insisted with a playful tone that disguised the seriousness of her words. "Oh, it's just one night, no strings attached. Don't you think it would be interesting to try something new?" Dave averted his gaze, trying to find something anything to anchor his thoughts. The glow of the flames in the fireplace seemed to become more intense, or perhaps it was his mind trying to process the absurdity of the situation. He knew he needed to react, felt as if he were trapped in a slow-motion nightmare. Each passing second seemed to amplify the discomfort hanging in the room. Finally, he took a deep breath and, with a forced sigh of relief, presented his smile tried to steer the conversation in another direction. "Well, I think we've had enough wine for tonight. Maybe it's time to rest." His attempt to end the subject was a failure. Luna, apparently excited about the idea, turned to him, placing her hand on his arm. "Dave, didn't you say you wanted to try something different in our relationship? Maybe it would be fun, something out of the routine." Those words hit him like a punch to the stomach. Since when was Luna dissatisfied with their routine? He had never imagined that his wife, the woman he believed he knew deeply, could even consider something like that. The room seemed smaller now, and every face there seemed to carry secrets he didn't know. Dave stood up abruptly, mumbling something about needing a moment, and headed toward the bedroom. As he walked down the hallway, he could hear fragments of the conversation continuing in the living room. Emma, still insistent, was saying something about how modern couples were exploring new boundaries, while Tom grumbled in disagreement, and Luna, he couldn't hear Luna, but that only made everything more unsettling. Was she defending it? Was she silent? He didn't know. Which was worse? When he reached the bedroom, he closed the door behind him and leaned against it, trying to organize his thoughts. The cabin, once a haven of tranquility, now felt suffocating. He looked at the bed, neatly made with crisp white sheets, the suitcases still open in the corner, a cruel reminder that the trip had just begun. His head was spinning, and he wondered how a night that promised to be light and full of laughter had turned into something so disconcerting. Dave sat on the edge of the bed and put his hands over his face, trying to breathe deeply. He needed answers. He needed to understand what was happening with Luna, with Emma, with everyone. There, but above all, he needed to understand what it meant for him, for the marriage he believed was solid as a rock deep down. Something told him that the trip, which was supposed to celebrate friendship and love, had crossed a point of no return. A few minutes later, Luna entered the bedroom. The door was opened slowly, as if she were trying not to disturb him. Her steps were hesitant, and the look she gave Dave carried a mix of uncertainty. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor, as if he expected to find answers in the grain of the wooden floor. When Luna closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch clicking seemed to echo in the room, ending the brief moment of silence. Dave was cautious, but he didn't raise his eyes. There was an almost palpable tension between them, as if each word carried the weight of something that couldn't be taken back. "Please don't misunderstand me. I just meant that maybe this could be something new, an experience, something that would connect us in a different way." He finally lifted his eyes, and what she saw in them made her hesitate. There was no anger, there were no shouts or accusations. What Luna saw was something much worse. "Deep, silent hurt connect us," he repeated, his voice low but firm. "You think we need that to connect? Since when do you feel something is missing between us, Luna? Because honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing you say anything like this." Luna was silent for a moment, pressing her hands against her chest as if trying to find the right words. "It's not that something is missing," she said finally. I just meant that maybe stepping out of our routine could be interesting. When Emma mentioned it, I thought, well, I don't know, I got carried away by the moment. I didn't mean to hurt you." He stood up abruptly, moving away from her. He began pacing the room, hands clasped behind his head, a gesture Luna recognized as a sign he was trying to control his frustration. "You didn't mean to hurt me, Luna. How can you say that? You saw how I reacted in that room. You saw what that did to me. How could you even consider something like that for a second?" She didn't know how to respond, as much as she tried to justify it. She knew she had crossed an important boundary. "It was just a silly idea, Dave. I didn't even think it through. I was having fun. We had a bit to drink. It wasn't supposed to be something serious." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Luna, You don't get it. It's not just about what you said, it's about what it means. I thought I knew you, that I knew where our boundaries were. Now I'm wondering if everything I thought was solid between us is slipping through my fingers." The silence that followed was as heavy as Dave's words. Luna tried to approach him, but he took a step back, as if he needed space. She felt small, powerless, as if she were watching the love between them, something she always considered indestructible, begin to crumble. "I don't want to talk about this right now," he said, lowering his voice. "I need some time to think. To understand how we got here without waiting for a response." Dave left the room, closing the door behind him with a firmness that made it clear he didn't want to be followed. Luna was left alone in the room, feeling the weight of the choices she had made that night. She sat on the bed and ran her hands through her hair, staring into space for the first time. She wondered if she had underestimated the impact of her words. That trip, which was supposed to be a celebration, now seemed to have turned into a survival test for their relationship. As much as Luna wished she could turn back time, she knew it was too late to undo what had been said the next morning. Silence dominated the cabin like a heavy cloud that refused to dissipate. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, but instead of being welcoming, it seemed a timid attempt to bring normalcy to an obviously tense environment. Dave was sitting at the table, up in his hands, looking out the window where the morning mist stretched between the trees. His eyes were fixed on the landscape, but his mind was far away, lost in the turmoil of thoughts that had kept him awake most of the night. Luna entered the kitchen shortly after her steps, light as if she feared breaking the fragile balance of the moment. "Good morning," she said softly, but the greeting hung in the air without a response. Dave only slightly tilted his head without taking his eyes off the window. Luna pulled out a chair and sat across from him, but didn't have the courage to say anything more. The distance between them was greater than the table that separated them. Soon Tom appeared, followed by Emma, who, unlike the others, seemed to have slept well and acted as if nothing had happened. "Wow, that smells good," Emma said, grabbing a cup and pouring herself some coffee. She was cheerful, but her energy seemed out of place, almost inappropriate for the heavy mood in the room. Tom, on the other hand, was visibly uncomfortable. He avoided eye contact with Dave and Luna, staying close to Emma, as if hoping she wouldn't cross any more lines. After a few minutes of superficial conversation, which felt more forced than natural, Dave finally broke the silence surrounding him. He placed his cup on the table with a controlled but firm movement and looked directly at Tom. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice calm but laden with seriousness. Tom nodded, putting his cup down on the counter without finishing his coffee. The two stepped out onto the porch, where the fresh mountain air offered a welcome respite from the suffocating tension inside the cabin. A few moments they remained silent, watching the trees sway in the wind, until Dave finally began. "Tom, what happened last night was unacceptable." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I'm not just talking about what Emma suggested. I'm talking about how it shook everything. This trip was supposed to represent, and honestly, I expected more from you." Tom seemed unsettled, his hands shoved into his pockets as he stared at the ground. "Dave, I didn't know." Emma was going to say that it was completely out of line. "I was as surprised as you." "Then why didn't you say anything?" Dave retorted, his voice rising slightly, but still controlled. "You stayed silent while she crossed a boundary. You could have stopped it, but you did nothing." Tom raised his eyes, finally meeting Dave's gaze. "I was trying to process what was happening. It was awkward and I didn't know how to react, but believe me, I don't support what she said, not at all." The sincerity in Tom's voice seemed to calm some of Dave's anger, but didn't erase the hurt he felt. "Look, Tom, I understand that sometimes people say things without thinking, but what bothers me isn't just what was said, it's the impact of it. Luna and I are in a complicated place right now, and I don't know if we'll be able to go back to how we were before." Tom sighed, running his hand over his face. "Dave, I'm sorry about that. Truly. I'll talk to Emma. She needs to understand the damage she's caused, and I want you to know that if I could go back in time, I'd have handled it differently." They stood in silence for a few more minutes. The sounds of nature filled the space between them. There was nothing more to be said at that moment. Dave knew Tom's words were sincere, but they couldn't undo what had happened. Their friendship, like his relationship with Luna, was on unstable ground, and he wasn't sure how or if everything could be rebuilt. As they returned inside, the silence resumed. The feeling that something irreversible had happened hung in the air. Dave didn't know if that trip or even the bonds that united the four of them could survive that night. Back in the bedroom, Luna was sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on her hands, clasped in her lap. The silence was dense, almost oppressive. And when Dave entered, closing the door carefully, the sound of the wood echoed like a final note in a melody no one wanted to hear. He leaned against the door for a moment, taking a deep breath before finally speaking. "I talked to Tom," he said, his voice calm but laden with emotional exhaustion. Luna looked up, trying to decipher what he was feeling, but Dave seemed closed off, like an impenetrable fortress. He didn't know Emma was going to suggest that, but that does change the fact that all of this is affecting us. Luna stood up slowly, taking a few steps toward him. "Dave, I know I messed up," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I should have realized how wrong that was, how you'd feel. I don't know what got into me at the time. It was like I wanted to seem cool. Fun. I didn't think about the consequences." He averted his gaze, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "Cool," he repeated, his voice harsher now. "Luna, this isn't about being cool. This is about respect, about boundaries. How did you not see that this would hurt us?" She took another step toward him, extending her hand as if she wanted to touch him, but stopped halfway, hesitating. "I see that now, Dave. I saw it the moment you walked out of the room last night. And I hate myself for it, but please, give me a chance to fix this, Dave." Finally looked into her eyes, and what Luna saw there disarmed her. It wasn't anger consuming him, but deep sadness, a disappointment that seemed greater than she could bear. He crossed his arms as if trying to protect himself from opening up too much. "Fix this? How do you think we fix something like this, Luna? It's not just about what happened last night, it's about what it represents. I thought we had a solid foundation, that we knew who we are to each other now. I'm here questioning everything." Her words hit Luna like a blow. She knew Dave was hurt, but hadn't imagined he was so lost regarding them. "Dave, I never wanted you to feel this way. You're everything to me. Everything. And maybe yesterday I was trying to compensate for something I didn't even know I felt. I wanted something new, something to take us out of our routine, but I chose the worst possible way." He frowned, confusion mixed with pain in his eyes. "And you thought that was the right way, swapping us, Luna, our intimacy, our trust, as if it were something disposable. That's what you think our marriage needed." She finally took the step she'd been avoiding, held his hand, squeezing it tightly. "No, that's not it, Dave. I was stupid. I got carried away by a stupid idea. Please, listen to me. I love you, and I'm willing to do anything to show you that—" He remained still, his expression unreadable as he looked at her. After a long moment, he released her hand, stepping back. "I just need time, Luna. I need time to process all this, because right now, I don't know what to think. And, to be honest, I don't know if I can look at you the same way." His words were like a knife to Luna's heart, but she knew she deserved to hear them. She felt her eyes burn but held back the tears, determined not to make the situation worse. "I'll wait, Dave, as long as you need, but please know that I haven't given up on us." He didn't respond, just grabbed his jacket, left the room, leaving Luna alone again. This time she couldn't hold back the tears. As the door closed, she collapsed onto the bed, sobs finally breaking the silence. She knew she had hurt Dave deeply. And now, all she could do was hope he would find a reason to believe there was still something worth saving between them. Dave left the cabin and took a deep breath of the fresh mountain air, as if he needed to fill it. To ease the weight he felt in his chest, he walked aimlessly, following the trail they had explored the day before. But this time the beauty around him seemed distant, almost irrelevant. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, memories and questions. He wondered how something that seemed so solid between him and Luna had become so fragile, so easily shaken. As he walked, flashes of past moments appeared in his mind. He remembered when he met Luna, how they would laugh together for hours, effortlessly, how they built a life based on trust and complicity. That was what hurt him the most, the feeling that something so precious could be jeopardized by an impulsive idea, something that didn't even make sense to him. But at the same time, he wondered if he had ignored signs, if he had failed to notice that something was missing for her. The trail ended in a clearing that led to a cliff, offering a wide view of the mountains. Dave stopped there, gazing at the horizon. The silence around him was almost deafening, broken only by the sound of the wind through the trees. He ran his hands over his face, trying to organize. Installments, he loved Luna, of that he was certain, but love didn't seem enough to fix what had been broken. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Luna was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Emma, noticing the tense atmosphere, tried to start a conversation. "Luna, last night was just a silly idea, right? I didn't mean to cause all this drama." Luna looked up, staring at Emma with an expression that mixed exhaustion and frustration. "Emma, you don't understand. It wasn't just the idea. It was what it revealed about me, about what's happening between me and Dave. Don't you see that it was more than just a joke?" Emma hesitated, not knowing what to say. For the first time, she seemed to realize that her words from the previous night had gone far beyond what she imagined. "I'm sorry, Luna. Really. Maybe I went too far. It's not about you," Luna replied, shaking her head. "It's about us. I saw Dave's look last night and he was so hurt, and I know I was the one who caused it, on the porch." Tom watched from a distance. He knew he needed to talk to Emma, but didn't know where to start. The tension among everyone was palpable, and he felt that the trip planned to be a moment of celebration had turned into a minefield of unresolved feelings. A few hours later, Dave returned to the cabin. He entered quietly, finding Luna in the kitchen. She stood up as soon as she saw him, but said nothing, waiting for him to break the silence. He put his hands in his pockets and looked at her, his face still laden with doubts, but also with something that seemed to be a decision. Luna's eyes filled with tears. She took a step forward but hesitated. "Dave, I don't expect you to forget. I just want you to know that I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you." He nodded slowly, as if still processing his own words. "Fixing this will take time, Luna. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but if you're willing to try." "So am I?" Luna took another step, this time carefully, holding his hand, as if fearing he would pull away. "I am Dave more than anything, because at the end of the day, you're everything to me, and I never want you to doubt that again." He squeezed her hand lightly, a spark of hope beginning to light up his eyes. It was a start, small but real. And as the two remained there trying to find a new balance, the cabin felt less suffocated. The sound of the wind outside carried a silent promise that with effort and love, some things could be rebuilt.